Oh, so your mic is muted.
All right, I just wanted to find out if you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, so we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. So I don't know. Do people have any questions related to what we were looking at? When was that? Is it just yesterday, I believe? I don't know. Anything that you need clarification over or about? Has anyone attempted to create context diagrams related to the projects that you're working towards? Or is there looking into that? Okay, so no questions. It appears no one has bothered to do that. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, so we went through a process of how exactly go about creating so-called context diagram or data flow level 0 diagram using Lucid chart, right? Very trivial process. I'm not really sure if we should be doing this, right? Walking you through the process of using a piece of software. But I suppose seeing as we don't have tutors assigned to this course, it's one of the reasons why I've actually decided that that this is in fact important. You know, walking through this this whole process. This is a thing with people that don't want to listen. Dani Siababa, you don't want to learn, do you? For months now, for weeks, for years in your case, you're in third year, going into fourth year, you seem to fail to use your UNZA assigned email address. How are you going to work? Right? When you go out there in industry, how are you going to work? Good luck with that. Anyway, don't want to listen. Anyways, so we went through a process of doing this, right, in Lucid, and we realized actually that it's a trivial process, right? So you can take the approach of creating a blank document if you wish. Alternatively, what you can do is you can use an existing template, right? The only thing you need to know really is how to use these different elements that are associated with the shape, the data flow shape. And again, remember that these shapes that we are using are not available by default in Lucid chart. And so what we do is we click the shapes button, right? This plus shapes button, so that we select the appropriate shape that we need, so that you have this stencil here. I don't know if you can see my screen here, but this panel here called data flow, right? And then you just drag and drop these things here, and then you draw the directed arrows. And incidentally, I mean, one of the ways in which you can draw the lines here mentioned that you can use the standard shapes approach. Alternatively, what you can do is you can just the way Lucid chart is implemented in such a way that you can specify the association of the lines. Excuse me. By the way, I do apologize. This I don't know. One of our neighbors decided to have a pool party. I don't know what happened there, but anyway. So you're probably going to hear some. I mean, I've closed the windows and the doors, but this place is not soundproof, sadly. So I do apologize if you hear some kids screaming in the background here. Very sad. But anyway, so you go to shapes, like I said, and then you click data flow, right? Data flow, and then you say selected shape there, and then it will pop up here. Now, what I mean is that once you have your process here, let's say this is a random system or something, and then you have your entities, right? The external entities here. So you just drag and drop them here. What I mean is, in as much as you can drag the arrow and put it here and then connect the external entities with the system, something else you can do is you just hover over one of the elements, like in this case, a system element. And then I don't know if you can see these, let me just Control plus, I think. Just zoom in here. I don't know if you can see these, is it red, the faded red, is it red or purple? I don't know. When you hover over it, you see what happens? Once you have a plus sign, you can actually drag, and create an arrow. right? So simplest way of instead of dragging the arrow here and then connecting it and then saying this is it, what you can do is you can just drag and drop it here. Then it comes up. Come here again, you drag and drop it here, right? And this will be tremendously useful once we start looking at these other models, right? So things like use case diagrams and especially class diagrams, right? What you will notice with class diagrams, for instance, is that the line can pretty much be changed here, right? So you change it into like this aggregation composition into composition, right? Or aggregation, for instance, right? I don't know. Anyway, just thought I would mention that, just random stuff here. Great, good stuff. So leave. So we continue our conversation then, and today we immediately transition into talking about use case diagrams, or use cases rather, right? And again, the SRS document has a portion where we expect you to include the comprehensive use case diagram associated with the system that you're building, right? So just that, so this is what we expect you to come up with right now. Granted, this is from the exemplar system that we have been working towards. I just wanted to mention upfront here that some of the use cases that we have here, well, this is not a comprehensive set of use cases that we have. Granted, the actors, I think, oh, we're missing administrator or something. But there is more. It's just we've just included a few just to use it as an example, I guess, as we're explaining different concepts. But fundamentally, we expect you to come up with this diagram and then you place it into the SRS document, right? All right. So just to set the stage for this whole notion of use cases, right? It turns out that, and we mentioned some of these things in lecture series number 7, I believe, but we'll revisit them nonetheless. Use cases fundamentally will capture the functional requirements associated with your system. If you remember, your requirements, the system requirements can be broadly classified into functional requirements and non-functional requirements, right? So your use cases are used to capture the functional requirements. And in essence, it's nothing more than just a description of a system as the user is interacting with the system to accomplish a desired goal, right? So what you're essentially doing is you're trying to showcase the interaction that takes place as the user, or the interactions that are going to take place as the user is interacting with the system. It will outline system features or the behavior of the system. Another key point here is that, in fact, use cases are written from the point of view of the actor, right, and not the system. So, in fact, what you're modeling is from the point of view of the entities that are going to be using the system, right? Another interesting thing to highlight here is that they provide a basis for that contract that you get into with your customers, right? Which is why your SRS document has a component where you're supposed to include the use cases. I'm going to pause here and just pull out the SRS document to remind us of what exactly I'm talking about. And I am going to see if I can find the wow, SRS template. So you should be able to find details to do with use cases. And these will probably find themselves under system features, obviously, right? So you'd specify them under system features. Anyway, so just trying to highlight the fact that because this serves as a contract between the developers and the customers, you'd ideally want to include this in the SRS document. Now, some key aspects associated with use cases is the focus is obviously on the interaction, right? The user interaction with the system. And really, you're looking at what exactly happens when an actor issues a certain request to the system, right? So this is the beginning. You usually initiate some sort of action in order for them to accomplish a certain goal, right? Because essentially those use cases are mapped onto desired user goals, right? And the end result is obviously production of all the answers that the user requests. The focus is on the features, the system features from the point of view of the actor, right? So if I'm developing a system that's going to, in case this is confusing, let's say I'm a part of the team that's developing the makeup request, request system. What we're saying here by saying we are focusing on the essential behaviors is we are more interested in the system feature. So we know that the makeup request system is going to have to facilitate a request for a makeup, right? So you probably need a use case that would be named something like request for makeup or something. You'd need a use case that's going to enable a lecturer to verify the request, right, initiated by the user. So verify makeup request, right? And the verification will probably have additional details like has this student provided evidence in support of their request, right? So maybe a scanned version of a scanned copy of their medical report or something, signed medical report from a recognized health service provider, right? All right, so again, you're focusing on the features, right, from the point of view of the actor, and so there's nothing like providing the gory details of how the system gets to operate, right, internally. Something else you don't focus more on is the specific details of how the user interface of the system is going to be rendered, right? So if you define a use case called makeup request, for instance, we don't care if the makeup, let's say we define, I guess we could write something here, but let's say we define, we create a use case called makeup request. What we're saying is that we know that your system, once implemented, at the very least, we include, we'll call this makeup request MR or something. Your system, once implemented and once being used by a user, right, like a student, it will have to include some sort of interface, right? Because how am I going to request a makeup? I request a makeup by providing important information, like identifying information about myself, my student ID, my name, the course, the assessment, right? Is it quiz number 2? Is it test number 1, for instance? What we're saying is that once the system is implemented, you probably have some sort of graphical user interface that the user is going to use to feed in those important details, right? When we are coming up with the use cases, we are not concerned about these details, right? All we are concerned is the high-level features associated with the system. Is this making sense? More people that don't want to listen, right? Jesus, how are you going to function in society? It's a bit of a joke, really. Anyway, so you obviously want to make sure that the I don't know if there's a question here. I thought I had a beep here. I'm wondering why people are not asking questions. Someone is laughing out loud. I don't know what's happening here. So you want to make sure that these use cases that you're coming up with are very concise and clear, right? And because they're going to be fed into the SRS document, you want to make sure that non-programmers, people that are not technically inclined, such as yourselves, will be able to read and understand the use cases, right? And of course, you want to include important details like a success scenario. So in the event that a request that's initiated by the user is successful, you want to be able to describe that success scenario, right? And then include things like any extensions that you might have insofar as like sub-processes are concerned, right? And we talk about things like, how we get to extend use cases, how we include additional use cases, the sub-processes associated with the main use case. Right, so in terms of the aspects that are composed of a use case, I mean, essentially, a use case is composed of an actor, right, and a goal, a desired goal, right? So if you look at these sticky figures here, actor and the desired goal. In fact, this is the only thing you have here. Actor and the desired goal represented by this use case over here, right? So an actor is nothing more than an entity that's going to interact with the system. and this must sink in, right? There's always this misconception that an actor is probably going to be a system user role, right? Like an administrator or a student or a lecturer. No, 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 no. An actor is any entity that interacts with the system. So if you have, let's say, a third-party application that's going to be interfaced with your system, that is an actor, right? It turns out that there's ideally two types of actors. So there's a primary actor and the secondary actor. The primary actor is usually the actor that will initiate interaction with your system, right? And then the secondary actor is an actor that will just come onto the scene once the primary actor has initiated some sort of interaction. So let's say your system will involve interacting with the third-party applications API, for instance, or a web service, once a user starts interacting with the system. The user, because they're the ones that initiate that interaction with the system, will be the primary actor. And then the web service, once they come into the scene, we consider the secondary actor. And then the desired, the goal is nothing more than your desired outcome, right? So in this case, the desired outcome would be to create an account to synchronize objects, to log in, to ingest a digital object, to upload a bit stream, to create metadata, right? So actors, desired goal, right? Main aspects of the use case. Is this making sense? Any questions? Okay. All right. So we're going to quickly transition and look at exactly how we go about creating use case diagrams, right? So coming up with a use case is one thing, but you have a use case diagram and then you have use case descriptions. A use case diagram would be something like this, right? It's composed of these stick figures and these oval shapes and associations, right? Lines originating from actors to the use cases. And then a use case description is something we introduced a while back, but it could be a description that's provided in textual format, or alternatively, you can use a tabular format such as this, right? So this is a use case description. The sticky figures with the oval shapes, that would be your use case diagram. And also just to mention up front here that the use case diagrams, while the use case diagrams are a part of a UML specification, the use case descriptions are not, right? They are not. They're just there to complement the diagrams. You understand this? All right. So in terms of the use case diagrams, right, what you do really is you just, once you identify all the different use cases associated with your system, and remember, you only be able to do this once you go through that thorough elicitation process, requirements elicitation. Everything is connected, right? So after requirements elicitation, you have a firm sense of the system features that the customer is going to want implemented. And then obviously, those system features are the ones that are going to be represented in this high-level diagram, right? So your high-level diagram, use case diagram here will have actors who are represented as stick figures or stick men or women or something with their corresponding names. And we'll talk about this soon. And then you also have use cases that are represented as ellipses, right? Those oval shapes that you can see here, things here. Similar to actors, the use cases will have their names inscribed within the oval shape. And then you have associations that are represented by lines connecting actors to use cases or connecting use cases to other sub-processes, right? In the case that you want to model some sort of extension or include sort of behavior that exists. Right, so this is what we're saying here. The use cases can be connected to other use cases that they use or rely on, right? Using extend and include. It's quiet here. I'm going to, are you there, by the way? I have to constantly ask because there have been times when you just get disconnected. Are you still there?
Yes, sir, we are here.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. All right, so in terms of the actors, right, so the components of the screenshot, the right side of the slide, showcasing the actors, right? Like I said, they're represented by stick figures. In certain literature, what you will be told is that your primary actors are supposed to appear on the right hand side of your use case diagram, right? And then the right side here will have secondary actors. So if you have like some sort of web service that is involved, well, that is a part of the model that you're coming up with, those actors would ideally conventionally be placed on the right-hand side of your use case diagram, right? But a key thing here is that your actors are represented by these stick figures, right? And then the stick figures should have corresponding names. The names are roles, not usernames, but specific roles associated with your system. So if your system is going to have like a student role where a number of students are going to have to access the system, then that would be the name of your actor, right? So let that sink in, right? The actor itself, the sticky figure, must be accompanied by the name, right? And the name appears right below the stick figure itself. So the thing is, when you're using a tool like these tools like Lucidchart, Draw.io, or perhaps Wired, or even Dia, usually these tools are designed in such a way that all you have to do is, oh, it's already here. All you have to do is you just drag and drop, and then there'll be a provision for you to provide a name. I don't know if you can see this. Oh, Control plus plus. I don't know if you can see the sticky figure that I just dragged and dropped here, right? This actor here. When I dragged and dropped it, right, it already has, it's like a template kind of arrangement where there's already provision for me to provide a name, right? All I have to do is just come here and just rename this to student. And this persists in all these sophisticated tools that are available out there, right? I guess I'm trying to emphasize this so that in the event that once we have test number 2 or something, or in the exam, there's a question about this, you must remember that these are important things that you must include, right, in the diagram. Yeah, so on your plain piece of paper, you draw your sticky figure or your stick figure, and then you provide the corresponding name for that particular actor, right? This I guess, I don't know if Lucidchart, if I can just go to Lucidchart and just check to see if I create a blank document, does it provide you with a template, right, for an actor where you just rename that template, the actor name? I think it does. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, right? Let me just quickly add this shape here. Just have that, I guess I'll close it eventually. And then I will go to UML, and then observe, right? So same thing with Dia. Lucidchart does the same exact thing, right? Where when you drag this sticky figure, it has a provision, right? So template name is actor, just double click, and then you rename it to whatever role you want to associate with this particular stick figure, right? I'm just going to do this. Is this making sense? No answer. All right, so the use cases, like we said, are represented by, so these are raw names. They're represented by these ellipses, right? And then inside the ellipse is where you have the specific goal, right? Right, so create account, login, create metadata, upload, ingest, synchronize. Essentially, you're signaling what sort of actions users are going to have to perform for them to accomplish the desired goal, right? Right, so these are all different use cases here. It's an oval shape. And again, when you're using a tool like Lucidchart, you just drag it from the appropriate shape, stencil, then just drop it there, and then you just rename it. Usually there's in here, there should be, I'm just going to open this. There's a provision for you to just double tap it, right? So if I just drag and drop the use case, you notice that there's a template name here. It's the placeholder name called use case, and you just double tap and then just say login or something, right? Even though nobody creates a login use case, right? Nobody does this. All right. So again, what's important here is that once you go through your registration process, you should be able to come up with a comprehensive set of use cases and actors, right? An interesting thing about these actors is I don't know if you've already picked up on this, but if I can just draw your attention to our discussion of our context diagram, what you immediately realize is there's a connection here, right? So looking at this diagram, these entities are pretty much actors. I don't know if you figured this out by now, right? This can be viewed as actors. Yeah. So if you do it right, if you get it right, right at the stage where you're coming up with the context diagrams, or your context diagram, all you have to do is just convert these into actors, and then you come up with your use case diagram. Granted, what you will notice is because your data for level 0 diagram does not have specific details associated with the internal mechanism of your system, you don't have a basis for you to identify use cases using the context diagram. It's not possible, right? Because at this point, you don't know exactly what goes on in the system. All you know is that the system interacts with these external entities. I'm sorry about the noise. I do apologize. I should have just gone to campus. It's a horrible place. Okay, so okay. Right, so obviously this is going to be fed from your, the output of your illustration technique is in part going to enable you to identify the different use cases associated with your system. Right. And then another important aspect of use case diagram is the automation boundary, or the system boundary as it is called, right? So what you'll notice from the diagrams that you create is that there's this solid line here, right, with the name of the system on top. Usually by convention, the name of the system is the top left corner, right? But strangely enough, I think Lucidchart puts it, it's centered. It's at the top, but it's centered. It doesn't matter though. But by convention, don't be surprised when you come across some of these tools, like Visual, I suppose, which will probably have the name of the system, the top left corner, right? But the most important thing is you want to be able to specify the automation boundary here. Very important. Because it signals the fact that that all of these use cases are a part of the system that you're implementing, and then these are nothing more than external entities that will interact with the system. So your system boundary, or automation boundary, is a rectangle, right, with the name of the system on the top. Right. I don't know if you're picking up on these things, these subtle things. Everything is just convention here, right? I'm going to throw, there's a bit of quiet, it's too quiet here. Why do you think it's important that we follow these rules? Why do you think it's important that we have to follow these rules? Like, oh, the use cases have to be named a certain way, right? It has to be a create, it's a doing word or something, right? It's a verb. This has to be a noun, right? Student. Library staff or something. Yeah. Ingest, it's an action. Why do you think it's important that we have to follow these rules? Like, oh, it has to be bounded into, the information box has to be this way. Primary actors have to be on the left and secondary actors have to be on the right. Why is this important? Why do you think it's important? Well, so the difference is, so Lewis has a question here, says, so what is the difference between an actor and entities? Well, the difference, it's a contextual, right? So it's more to do with where, which sort of model you're making reference to, right? So if you look at your context diagram refers to these things here as entities, right? Things like postgraduate student, postgraduate supervisor. Oh, I forgot postgraduate supervisor here, right? Library staff, right? But if you're using a use case diagram, the name of these things changes, right? These are called actors now. They're no longer entities, right? So the difference is really more to do with the context within which you are using those names, right? I guess when you're explaining things to somebody who knows what you're talking about, it really doesn't matter, but it's always nice to stick to the rules. But please, don't ignore my question. I have a question here. Why is it important that we follow these rules? Like sticky figures have to be drawn like this. Why do we have to use these funny shapes, right? It's like we are kids now, right? It's funny shape like this. Why is this important? Okay, don't want to answer, that's fine. It's probably coming in the exam. All right, so, or in the test. Maybe that will make you think. Great. So the other thing you have, right, as part of the use case diagram is the so-called relationship lines, right? And ideally, these relationship lines will do nothing more than help you determine or establish exactly what actors are able to do with the system, what sort of interactions they can have with the system. It turns out that depending on the role you're making reference to, it's entirely possible that they will not be able to perform certain actions. Like for instance, if you're developing a system that's going to have different types of users, a system like Moodle, we know that there are certain things that lecturers do when they log into Moodle that students don't do, like updating the grades, uploading resources, right? So once you model, or once you create a use case diagram associated with that sort of system, the lines will signal exactly what form or an actor is going to be allowed to perform on the system. So like in this case, you notice that the library staff will not be able to ingest a digital object, for instance, right? You know, granted, if you think about it, if you think about this a lot more, then I think it would make sense to perhaps enable library staff to be able to ingest documents, right? I do apologize here. The library staff should be able to log in or something, but I was trying to put across a different message here. If we had an administrator account, for instance, you notice that, and we have a use case that says disable account. You know that that's an action that's only going to be performed by a root user, an administrator, right? These other actors will not be allowed to perform that sort of action, right? So the directed lines will signal what that particular actor is allowed to do by way of interacting with the system. All right. So these are the relationship lines it's talking about, and for the general relationship lines, just wanted to put it out there that you don't need to indicate arrows per se, but when you are modeling things like extend relationship or include or uses relationships, you have to specify the arrows because they signal something, right? So all of these are the relationships we're talking about. So it turns out that sub-processes, so if you have use cases that need to be included or need to be associated with already existing use cases, you can use either the includes or the extend keywords, right? For you to specify that sort of relationship. So what we're saying here is that, and I hope I have these mapped up correctly. I think so. If not, we'll be able to correct these. So what we're saying here, for instance, is that the ingest use case includes an upload bit stream, right? So essentially, as part of the ingest object operation, this needs to be done as well, right? Same goes for the extend. Something I forgot to mention, I do apologize for this, is this part here. Observe, generalization, right? If you've noticed here, the PhD student has a hollowed out arrow directed towards the student actor. What this means is that you can view this sort of relationship as something similar to what we talked about when we were looking at generalization in classes. What we're saying is that the student is a general actor, but the PhD student is a more specialized type of the student, right? So it's entirely possible that perhaps there could be certain actions that the PhD student or master student will be able to perform that just an ordinary student won't be able to perform, right? So you generalize this sort of relationship. All right. I don't know if there are any questions, but I want to just quickly walk us through how exactly you get to do this using Lucidchart, right? And I was hoping we could, at the time in 10 minutes, I was hoping we could finish off use cases, but I don't think we will here because of the walkthrough, I suppose. But so in terms of using Lucidchart, I mean, it's the similar thing like what ways, three main ways actually. And I didn't showcase the third way of importing the an already existing diagram, but I'll showcase it today, I guess. So you can start on a blank slate where you create a blank document. Alternatively, you can create your use case diagram from an existing template where you just edit out the things that you're not interested in. And then the third option is you import a diagram that has been shared with you. And I guess I'll start with the import, and then we'll look at the two things we looked at yesterday just to showcase how this works, right? I never tried this out, but let's see if it works. So I'm just going to get my use case diagram, which is here. I'll open Lucidchart, and then I'm going to export this. I'm going to say file, and then I will say export. I will export this as a, I don't know if I should export this as a, let's check the import data. Let's see the options. Oh, wow. Import file, import diagram. Okay, it appears you can't, you can only import from, this is very sad. You can only import, let's see, new, import. I guess the import feature is only there when you're importing a diagram from these additional software tools, right? I apologize for that. I thought this import feature would allow you to, maybe it's a folder thing. Okay, it's not there. So if you create this diagram using a tool like this, for instance, observe. I hope this works out because I think we can example login, I suppose. This is the thing with not being up to speed with some of these tools, right? Have to fidget around and figure out how this works. Let's see if we can export this. I'm curious if we can export this to a different format, like this is the part where Dia is disappointing. I thought there was a part where I could export this as a visual, Microsoft Visual. Ah, there we go. Visual XML format. Let's try this. VDX, and then I'll just dump it in my home directory. Say save. So the import feature here is only applicable to instances where you want to import. You want to import from a different format, right? So if you created this artifact using a different tool, like Visual in this case, you can import this and hopefully it's going to pop up with the student and the login use case, right? Then when you say done, where the hell is it? Is this diagram 2 or something? I hope this works. When you do that, then hopefully you should be able to view this thing, and it's not here, which is quite sad, you know. But ideally, it's supposed to work. It looks like this thing is not working. I guess because I'm exporting this from, I'm not exporting this from Microsoft. I'm not satisfied. The import failed, right? I guess maybe if we import this from, okay. Anyway, if you let's try draw.io, right? Let's try and create a diagram from draw.io and then try and import it from, and this is going to be, where's the use cases here? It should be somewhere under UML. And then very sad. Let's create this. Yes. I'm just curious as to how the import feature works, whether it works decently or something. If not, and I don't want this garbage. I don't want an activity diagram. I want to create something else. This is what I want. Create use case. Login. Okay, so login and then Wow. Even editing is a mission here, right? Edit data. Whew. It appears I'm finding it hard to. Oops. I'm actually even finding it hard to to edit the text, which is quite sad, right? Very sad indeed. It doesn't matter anyway. I haven't used this thing a lot. So let's say we export this as a. Everything just appears not to work. Anyway, we're wasting time here. I'm not really sure exactly how a file imported from draw, a file created from draw.io would be imported from here. I wanted to experiment with that. If you click on that, you'd have to select draw XML files and draw.io. Okay. So we can export this and say export as advanced format. But there's no option for XML here. This is horrible. Very sad. Anyways, life is sad sometimes. It's unfortunate that these formats are not there in the export, but you can play around with this. So for instance, if there's a team in the house that's using a tool like Visual, for instance, I don't know where you've gotten the license from, but if you decided to use Microsoft Visual, remember that you can import those artifacts, right, into Dia, right? I've never used OmniGraph before. I've played around with Glyphy though. Okay, great. So two options, right? Just let's look with the two options. You start with a blank document or you start with a template, right? So the blank document workflow is the same as for what we discussed when we're looking at context diagrams. You will not have the shapes for use cases appearing by default. So what you have to do is you click the plus shapes button. Once you do that, you in the pop-up menu that's going to come up, you select UML, right? Once you select UML, you specify the type of template you're interested in. It could be like a use case or something. It will come up. This is the part where you are using a template. So you select UML. Once you select UML, then you have access to the shapes, right? And then you start dragging and dropping them. So on a blank document, and I think I've already showcased the way you play around with a blank document. What we're saying is that with a blank document, once you log into Lucidchart, you'll be presented with this screen here. You click on documents, and then you're logged on, obviously. Once you click on document, you go on new, and then you say blank document. Once you say blank document, you will not have the use case or the UML shapes available to you by default. Notice by default, you only have standard, flowchart, and shapes, right? So for you to gain access to the UML models, what you do is, or the shapes, you click on this plus shapes button, and then you scroll down, and these things are arranged in alphabetical order. You go to U, right, where you have UML, and then you just tick UML. If you're just interested in a specific UML diagram, to avoid clutter, just expand the UML option and then choose UML use case, right? Once you select that, you click on the use selected shapes, and then these shapes will come up here. And then you just drag and drop, right? You specify the associations that exist by just dragging the line like so. If you want to represent generalization, for instance, you do the same thing. You drag here, right? But because this is generalization, I'm going to go to I don't one is forward and back. I'll go here and then I'll specify that it's generalization, which is this arrow here, right? And notice that I'll have this shape here, this nice shape. Do you understand this? Hello? Can you hear me? Could somebody say something to signal the fact that you can hear me or something? It's polite to do that, right? To answer somebody's question. Otherwise, it'd be like I'm talking to myself or something. Okay.
We can get you, sir.
Yeah, at least type something so that I know, right? Sometimes microphone will malfunction, which is why I repeatedly ask if you can hear me. All it takes is just 1 second for you to respond. All right, so I know this is off topic, but what you can do is in 3010, what you're doing with Mr. Walia, if you've been told to do an assignment, or if you want to practice, you can do the same thing, right? There is an option for you to use an ER to use an entity relationship, and I guess I have to ER diagram or something. There is an option for you to, there we go. You can model an entity, you can create an entity relationship diagram. So these things you're creating with Mr. Wali, right? Databases, yeah? Entity name, and then the attributes, the fields and whatnot, right? You can do the same thing, and then you model the multiplicities in the same way that we're going to do with classes, right? So if we say a student and the course, I guess is each student, many students can take many courses, right? We know that the multiplicity that exists there is a many to many relationship, right? So these 3 legs here signal many, right? This sign here is 1. So you have to do is you click on this line and then you change this to signal that it's a many to many type of relationship. So you should develop the habit of doing this, right? You might just find yourself in an environment where you're told, you find work and you're told, can you create an ER diagram for the database you want to implement, right? Then you surprise them or you impress them by using Lucidchart or something. All right, so the other option is you use a template, right? Which I highly encourage you probably start using as you are playing around with Lucidchart. For starters, use templates, right? And then edit out the aspects that you don't need from the template, right? So using a template is pretty trivial, straightforward. All you do is on the homepage of Lucidchart, you click the new button and then you say document from template, and then you choose the specific type of document that you want to model. Again, search is your friend. I'll just say use case, UML use case. I'll click here and I'll just scroll down to see if I can find a nice use case diagram, right? There are plenty of templates here. So I'll probably choose the loan approval use case diagram as a template, and then I have a visual presentation of it. I'm happy with it. I'll say open template. And then using this template, you just change the names of the use cases and the names of the actors and specific details, and just expand the specific details associated with the associations that you have, right, these lines, so that it suits the type of application you're implementing. Maybe the name should change here as well. I'll just say this is an SRD system, right? And then I know that SRD system has a student, has a postgraduate student. Oh, well, postgraduate student. Then I have library staff. Then I have the administrator, right? Then perhaps I also have student. This is postgraduates. What the hell am I thinking? Postgraduate student. Maybe this type of postgraduate student would be like a doctoral student, right? PhD student. And then this other type of student will be master's with an apostrophe student, right? So you edit it out and then you change the names of the use cases because these don't apply, right? This is coming from the template. And then for things that don't exist, like what do you call this? The associations that exist, you know that generalization here. So I'll just drag, drop, and then just change the type of arrow here so that I model generalization that exists. I do the same thing for master's student. I just drag and drop it here. Again, I model this as a generalization also, right? So I have, in fact, sometimes maybe you might do this so that it's more visually appealing or something. Or in certain instances, you can have doctoral student there, you drag, come on, you drag postgraduate student and then you have master's student up there so that it's clear that this is being generalized by postgraduate student, this is also being generalized by postgraduate student. And then you just edit out these things here. right? Listen, I'm transitioning to a different class. Tomorrow we will look at, we'll start looking at use case descriptions so that you know exactly what you should be doing when you're using this template that is available on the Moodle site. This template here, which was made available to you, right? You notice that this template here has, at the very end, it has a very nice table, right? In literature, what you will discover is that some of the aspects that you have in this table here might not appear there. So which is why we put it out there from the onset that we are going to use this particular template. So I'll see you tomorrow at 16 hours. All right, unless if there are questions, but. I'm going to start putting people on the spot here. Aaron, you should be serious with life. You are joining class 51 minutes after we started. Why? Why is it so hard for you to sit down and realize that what you're doing right now has implications on your future? Why is that so hard to understand? Why is it so hard for you to understand that if you don't do the assessments, you will fail this course. And if you fail this course, you will not graduate after next year. If you don't graduate after next year, no, if your plan is to look for a job, you will not be able to find a job. If you don't graduate after next year, you will have to pay more money for you to come back to school. Why is that so hard to understand? All you have to do for what you're doing in this phase of your life is just show up. Show up and read. It's not that hard, right? The vast majority of you have already been, it's a free ride actually. Being at UNZA is a free ride, right? It's just freeloading here. You have bursaries, right? Why is it so hard for you to do that? Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Stay safe.